She was about to turn off the kitchen light when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Engines. Multiple engines. Their deep rumble cutting through the shriek of the wind. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she moved to the window, pulling back the faded curtain just enough to peer into the darkness. Through the swirling snow, she could make out headlights, not one or two, but many, weaving through the trees that lined her property. Her first instinct was fear. A single mother living alone with her daughter, miles from the nearest neighbor, had learned to be cautious. But as the bikes drew closer, she could see the riders hunched against the cold, their leather jackets offering little protection. Against the sub-zero temperature and biting wind, they were in trouble. Sarah's hand trembled on the curtain. Every sensible bone in her body screamed at her to lock the doors, turn off the lights, and pretend no one was home. She'd heard the stories, everyone had. Bikers rolling through small towns bringing trouble in their wake. But then she saw one of them dismount. Nearly collapsing in the snow, another rider rushing to help him up. They weren't just cold, they were desperate. She thought of Emma sleeping peacefully in the next room. She thought of her late husband, Jack, who'd died 2 years ago in a construction accident, leaving her alone to raise their daughter on a waitress's salary. Jack had always been the first to help anyone in need, sometimes to a fault. "We're all just trying to make it through this life, Sarah," he used to say. "Might as well help each other along the way." Before she could talk herself out of it, Sarah unlocked the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. 25 bikers had pulled into her clearing, their faces barely visible beneath frosted beards and ice-crusted scarves. "Ma'am!" one of them shouted over the wind, removing his helmet to reveal a weathered face and kind eyes. "I'm Marcus. We're heading to a charity run in Billings, raising money for children's hospitals. Got caught in this storm about 40 miles back. 2 of our guys are showing signs of hypothermia. Is there any way—" "Get inside," Sarah interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. "All of you now." She would never forget the looks on their faces. Surprise, relief, gratitude so profound it brought tears to frost-bitten eyes. They filed into her small cabin, filling every available space. The living room, kitchen, and hallway became a sea of leather and denim. Sarah immediately started giving orders like a general commanding an army. "You two," she pointed at the youngest-looking bikers. "Get more wood from the shed out back. You," she gestured to a woman with short gray hair. "Help me get blankets. Everyone else, get those wet jackets off before you freeze to death in here." She woke Emma, who emerged from her bedroom rubbing her eyes, looking like a tiny blonde angel in her pajamas. "Mama? Honey, we have guests who need our help. Can you be my big girl and help me make hot chocolate?" Emma's eyes widened as she took in the crowd of strangers filling their home. But she nodded solemnly and padded into the kitchen. Within 20 minutes, Sarah had transformed her modest cabin into a rescue station. She'd pulled out every blanket, towel, and article of warm clothing she owned. The 2 men with hypothermia were wrapped in quilts by the fire, sipping the hot soup she'd somehow managed to make from leftover chicken and vegetables. Emma moved through the crowd like a little nurse, handing out steaming mugs of hot chocolate and shy smiles that seemed to warm the bikers more than any beverage could. Marcus had tears streaming down his face as he watched Sarah work. "Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you. You have no idea what you've done for us tonight." Sarah just shook her head, handing him a mug. "You do the same for me." The storm raged outside for hours, but inside the cabin, something beautiful was happening. The bikers, who called themselves the Iron Hearts Riders, told stories about their charity work. They'd been riding together for 15 years, raising money for sick kids across the country. The woman with gray hair, whose name was Rita, showed Emma pictures on her phone of children they'd helped, kids with cancer and heart conditions who'd received treatment because of the money the riders had raised. "We ride because we were all lost once," Marcus explained to Sarah as dawn began to break. "Life had beaten us down, but we found purpose in helping others. Every mile we ride, every dollar we raise, it's our way of saying thank you for still being here." Sarah understood that more than he knew. How many nights had she lain awake after Jack died, wondering how she'd make it through? How many times had she felt completely alone, drowning in grief and responsibility? When the storm finally passed and the sun rose over a landscape transformed into a glittering winter wonderland. The bikers prepared to leave. They'd checked and rechecked their bikes, made sure everyone was healthy enough to ride, and thanked Sarah at least 100 times each. Marcus pressed an envelope into her hand, but she tried to give it back. "Please," he said quietly. "It's from all of us. We want to help." Before Sarah could protest further, they were gone, the sound of 25 engines fading into the distance. She opened the envelope to find $1,200 and a note that simply said, "Thank you for reminding us that angels exist." Sarah cried then, holding the money that would pay for Emma's school, supplies, and fix the leak in the roof. But she wasn't crying just for that. She was crying for the unexpected beauty of human connection, for the way strangers had become friends in a single night, for the proof that kindness still existed in the world. The next morning, a full day after the bikers had left, Sarah was outside chopping wood when she heard them. Engines, not 25 this time, but hundreds. She straightened, shading her eyes against the winter sun, and couldn't believe what she saw. Motorcycles were pouring onto her property from every direction, forming a massive circle around her cabin. She counted 50, then 100, then lost track entirely. 200 bikers, maybe more, all wearing the Iron Hearts patch, all climbing off their bikes and standing in respectful silence. Marcus walked forward, his eyes shining. "Sarah Mitchell, word spread about what you did. Bikers from 6 states wanted to come thank you personally." He gestured behind him. "But we also wanted to do something more." For the next 8 hours, Sarah watched in amazement as 200 bikers transformed her property. They fixed her sagging porch, replaced her worn roof, chopped enough wood to last the entire winter, and restocked her pantry with more food than she'd seen in years. A woman who owned a construction company had brought her crew. A man who ran a heating business replaced her ancient furnace. Others painted, cleaned, repaired, and rebuilt. Emma ran through the crowd like she'd found 200 new grandparents. And in a way, she had. These tough-looking bikers with their tattoos and leather melted at her giggles, letting her try on their helmets and teaching her to rev their bike engines. As the sun began to set and the bikers prepared to leave, Marcus pulled Sarah aside one more time. "You gave us shelter when you had every reason to be afraid. You gave us warmth when you didn't have much to spare. You reminded us why we do what we do, because people like you exist in this world." Sarah shook her head, overwhelmed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You did what you thought was right, even though it was scary. That's not something just anyone does. That's courage. That's love. And that's what's going to change this world, one act of kindness at a time." As 200 motorcycles pulled away from her cabin that evening, their lights twinkling in the dusk like earthbound stars, Sarah held Emma close and finally understood what Jack had meant all those years ago. We're all just trying to make it through this life. Might as well help each other along the way. She'd sheltered 25 freezing bikers in a storm, and they'd sheltered her right back, not from the cold, but from the loneliness and fear that had been her constant companions since Jack died. They'd shown her that she wasn't alone, that the world was full of people, ready to help if you just had the courage to open your door. Inside her newly repaired cabin, warm and secure for the first time in years, Sarah tucked Emma into bed. Her daughter looked up at her with Jack's same kind eyes and asked, "Mama, are those bikers coming back?" Sarah smiled, kissing her forehead. "I think they're always going to be with us, honey. In every kind thing we do, in every person we help. That's how love works. It just keeps spreading." And in that moment, in a small cabin in Montana, surrounded by the evidence of extraordinary kindness, Sarah Mitchell finally understood that she and Emma were going to be just fine. Because in a world where 200 bikers show up to thank a woman for her compassion, anything is possible.